Hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of Average Joe's 3D. I'm your host Fergie. Today is Projects Part 2, as I promised. This is a follow-up to Projects Part 1. This is a big grabber. Now, if you remember in the previous episode, the first projects, I was printing out the big grabber hand on the CR10. All the parts were blue. And guess what? When you're doing a big project like that, you should probably make sure you have enough PLA to finish the project, because I woke up in the morning and it was still printing and my roll was empty. So guess what? I had to go through and reprint the whole thing. That was 19 hours that were wasted. And so that's why you see several different colors. Now I used the yellow on the Ender 2, not Ender 2, but CR10. It's a yellow, orangey color. And then the red was done on my new JGAurora A5, which, great printer. That set up, the JGAurora A5 is set up with a 0.4 nozzle, and the CR10 is with a 1mm nozzle. So I wanted all the details to be done on the JGAurora. So let's go ahead and take a look. As you can see, there's a bunch of parts. There's maybe 20 bolts that are going to bolt together. I had to use basically every tool in the house to start putting it together. One of the important things is drills and drill bits. There's so many holes and areas and things that you have to take filling out of it, supports out of, that using a drill bit to ream it out and make it just a little bit bigger is really great. Because if not every one of these holes is going to be perfectly round. And instead of using like an X-Acto knife, it's easier to just use a drill bit, quick in and out, and you're done. So all of these have been reamed out a little bit so that these will fit right in there like that. Great. Now what I found out is if you don't ream it out and you try to force it in place, all the little ridges up and down this will grab inside, and you cannot take it back apart without breaking it like this. This one actually broke in half when I tried to get it out. So you have to be careful with that, and all of these are threaded, so all the nuts are going to have to be reamed out as well so that the threads line up. So drill bits are your friend here. I had to use, let's see here. Every pair of pliers. I had to use the X-Acto knife. I had to use grabbers. I had to use cutters. I'm going to have to use socket wrench kits to put them together. There we go. This is 16 millimeters. Each one of these bolts is 16 millimeters. It's pretty big. I mean, it's really impressive. So let's go ahead and talk about your supports and infill. So I spent half a day taking supports off. A lot of supports involved in this, but that's to be expected with big pieces like this. Now I've never put together something this industrial, and what I mean by industrial is I've done plenty of parts where you had to, say, take this piece, glue it into another piece. I've had plenty of hinged products like these guys, right? And you just basically put a little pressure, they snap apart and they start moving, which is great. This is nothing like that. And the reason I'm saying this is each one of these parts, because they're moving so much against each other, if you don't put more infill than 10%, they're going to start to come apart. And I'll show you an example. Here we go. There we go. So this piece, one of the center pieces, is the rod that goes in and out. I only had a 10% infill in that, and this top part immediately started separating from the deck because there's nothing for this attached to inside except a couple layers on top, and it started pulling itself apart. So on a big industrial projects that are going to take a lot of force, you have to use 20 to 30% infill, or it's not going to take the torque that you're putting on it. Because not only did this piece start coming apart, but this piece started coming apart, Let me see if I can zoom in and show you this. So what I had to do was all around in here, I had to take PLA and soldering iron and start to melt it so that I reinforced these, or they started separating from the deck. Same thing with these guys. If you take a look, right here, these, because there's so much force on these moving back and forth, it started splitting right here, and so I had to go through and reinforce that area because that's where the most torque is on this, and it started coming apart. Same thing with these guys. If you take a look right here, I had to reinforce that area. So I kind of learned my lesson that when you're using something that's going to take a lot of force, a lot of movement back and forth, besides a simple hinge like this, crank up the infill, people, because if you don't, you're going to spend 20 hours on 2 different printers, and that's 40 hours of printing, only to discover that none of your pieces are going to hold up to use. So make sure you crank that up. So let me go ahead and put this together, and then I'll come back and show you the finished product. And here's the final result of the claw. As you can see, I've put it all together. I've used Velcro straps here and here. I'll leave a link in the description below, but as you move your wrist, it works a mechanism and causes it to close. It closes pretty well, as you can see. Don't want to close it too hard, you could easily break it. So this is all for this episode of Average Joe's 3D. Hope you guys had a really good time, and we'll see you later.